Hi, everyone. Welcome to the House of Lou podcast. I'm your host, Veronica Theodoro. This episode of House of Lou is sponsored by Royal Banks of Missouri. Retta Tussey is joining me in the studio today. I've known Retta for years. Our paths first crossed when she was working as an interior designer at Castle Design, and I was in the early years of covering the home and design beat for St. Louis Magazine. Retta is a true creative at heart. In addition to her work as an interior designer, she has designed stationery. She is currently the designer of Retta Jane, a line of clothes for tween girls. And later this year, she is opening a very special flagship storefront and reading room in Clayton, which we'll hear all about in our interview today. We're going to get into all of this and more, but first, here's what's been going on in and around my house. The Architect and Designer Awards is just a few weeks away on April 9th. I have selected the Visionary Award winners for this year, and I just am so excited about all of it, truly. It's going to be a great night. Tickets are still on sale, so be sure to reserve yours at stlmag.com/design. I was texting with designer Annie Brawler of Eurotrash a few weeks ago, and she invited me to come see her new atelier in the Immaculate Conception Church in the Gate District. Annie and her husband Charlie are the new owners of this church, which was built in 1908 by the St. Louis architectural firm Barnett, Hayes, and Barnett, coincidentally, the same architects who designed my house. Anyway, I was blown away when I walked into this church. It truly felt like I was on the set of a movie. Annie's collection of antiques and vintage furniture styled throughout this gorgeous interior was really, something to behold. Anyway, we're excited to write about it, so be sure to look for our story in my newsletter in the next week or so. And we are also covering Annie's Divine new line of candles in an upcoming edition. So be on the lookout for all of that. Reporter Liz Miller wrote an article recently for the newsletter with the headline, "What is a Historic District Worth?" If you're interested in the topic of historic preservation, I encourage you to read it. The article dispels the notion that houses with historic landmark status can't be torn down, sparking conversation about what can or should be preserved in the St. Louis area. I'll link to the story in my show notes for you to take a look at it. And a friend recently gave me a box of custom stationery designed by Suzanne Miller, the owner of Papier Lisse and a previous guest on this podcast. Suzanne designed it with so many special details that I love it. The colors and the patterns are inspired by Carvin of Paris, who designed clothes for women in the late 1940s and became famous for a green and white striped summer dress called La Griffe that became her trademark. Anyway, the stationery is beautiful. Suzanne is a wonderfully talented designer, and I just love the experience of it. So thank you so much. And before we get started with my interview with Retta, here is a word from our sponsor. Dreaming of a spring home refresh? Turn your vision into reality with a home equity line of credit from Royal Banks of Missouri. Whether you're looking to remodel your kitchen, elevate your entertainment area, or anything in between, you can enjoy a flexible, convenient option to fund your renovation project and upgrade your space with confidence. Visit royalbanksofmo.com for more details on how you can put your home's value to work. Royal Banks of Missouri, member FDIC, and equal housing lender. Retta, Welcome
Thank
to the
you.
podcast. It's so good to see you.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
I'm glad you're feeling better.
Yes, the flu has wiped us all out, but we are back and standing.
Yes, we finally made it to March.
I'm so ready for spring.
I was scrolling in my Instagram feed last night, and I ran across a picture of a kitchen that you designed and that was on our March 2018 cover. Do you remember the neutral colored kitchen with the white tile backsplash? And I think Martin designed the table.
He did. I remember that green countertops.
Yes.
I remember that very, very, very well.
So beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm curious to know if you could go back in time and think about that time in your life. What was going on for you in terms of your creativity? What season of life were you in?
Well, and it's interesting for those listening to kind of put it in perspective. By the time it makes the magazine cover, you kind of have to rewind a good 18 months or 2 years to think about where I was creatively during that actual project. But it was a very exciting time. It was a very new time for me in the sense that I was, what would I have been? Goodness, late 30s? I mean, doing the math. But I'd been in interiors for a long time at that point, almost a decade here in St. Louis. That was one of my favorite clients of all time. They gave me a lot of design freedom, and they trusted me. And we'd worked together on several projects prior to that. But it was a time when there was just a lot of freshness, I would say. A lot of thinking outside the box. I was with my now husband, and I'd taken on stepchildren at the time. And I mean, it was just kind of a period of growth for me on the personal end, but also I was really making strides on the design side of my career.
Awesome. And you have a BFA, which I actually was not aware of. So you have a background in the fine arts. Were you always an artist?
Oh, always.
Really? Okay.
Always. I mean, yes, I was always the creative kid. And in fact, now I have a 6-year-old boy and a 7-year-old boy, and I look at them and I'm going, oh, that's how I was. I mean, always coloring, always getting into something artistic, whatever it is. So I would say from a very, very early age I look back now and I think the kids of today have such an advantage because back then obviously we didn't have the internet, we didn't have all these other disciplines. You couldn't see all the possibilities for art and for a creative career. So I dabbled here and there, but never really knew where it might take me.
Okay. So we're going to get into all of that. In 2000, I guess it was 2001, maybe 2002, after 9/11, you moved back from New York City to St. Louis, and you decided to launch a stationery company, which is so cool. What did that time in your life teach you about building something from scratch?
I mean, it certainly pulled the curtain back on what was possible. I think naivete had something to do with that. It was a period of time, for those who remember, that was very unknown and uncertain. I had a creative degree, and in 2002 here in St. Louis, this is again post 9/11, right post 9/11, there weren't many creative career opportunities here. And so I floundered for a little bit, and it was with the encouragement of my actually now ex-husband, who encouraged me to start the stationery line because I had been freelancing. And it was, I think one of the lessons it taught me was to really think outside the box when it comes to using your degree, using your background, using your skills. I had been illustrating and freelancing for people kind of during that time when I was trying to find a creative position here full time. And he was the one that said, hey, you can take these skills and turn them into something concrete and make a business out of it that may not be something you studied or something you expected.
Right. It's all about, I guess, staying open to the possibilities, right? You just never know when an opportunity is going to present itself.
And also that 90% of it is showing up and having the stamina.
Yes.
10% is the talent. Now, don't get me wrong, talent I think is important, but I think so much of it is showing up and putting in the work.
So I tell my kids all the time, the hardest thing to do is to just keep showing up.
Yes.
And they're like, what, Mom? Like, I don't think they get what that means quite yet, but it's so true. And then in 2008, the economy crashed and you pivoted at that time to another creative outlet, which was interior design. Did it feel like you were starting over again?
Not really. At the time, I mean, maybe in hindsight, I would view it that way, but I think at the time it was I had studied interiors, so I knew it well. And with the stationery, I just saw the writing on the wall. It was our price point, it was the economy, and I knew something had to give.
Okay.
And so it felt like a natural next step, a natural trajectory to go into interiors. And so I just kind of dipped my toe in that water. But I don't think at the time it felt like starting over. I think at the time it felt like, okay, well, what could be next?
Right. And so how did you, if you can remember and think back on that time, how did you start? What were some of the first steps that you took?
Great question. That was a long time ago. I had a partner at the time. And so he and I think we just started putting our names out there. And we started doing little projects either for friends, family, and putting ourselves out there to the press, and slowly built a name up for ourselves over time.
And you had, I'm sure, very loyal clients with your level of talent.
Well, thank you.
And so now you are in the world of fashion design. And you have a tween girls clothing line, Retta Jane, named after you.
It's named after me, my first and middle name, and then my mother is also Retta Jane, and my grandmother's Retta Jane.
Okay, fabulous. So tell us a little bit about the origin story. How were you inspired, and what made you decide to go in the direction of fashion?
So, I will pull it way back. So when I was in college, I actually had internships in the fashion industry. So while I was studying interior design, I managed to get my foot in the door in New York. So I worked for Betsy Johnson and Tommy Hilfiger in New York on the fashion side. And so that was kind of my first foray into that world. I'd always loved it.
Yes.
So I had a taste of it, I should say. Fast forward to maybe it would have been 2016, and my father-in-law passed away. And I told my husband, I'll go out and I will get clothes for the kids for the service. And my stepchildren were young kids at that time. So my stepson was easy. I got him, sure, navy pants and a white shirt, something basic. Lola was a preteen, and I went out under the guise of, I will literally just go to the mall and buy something and be done. I shopped all day. By the end of it, I would have spent any amount of money, and I couldn't find anything that wasn't extreme. And by extreme, I mean too juvenile, so unicorns, glitter, and graphic, or too mature, so short and tight, cropped, and just, in my mind, not appropriate for a vast variety of reasons. And so I came back to the house in tears, which seems so silly, but I was so defeated by this because it felt like an easy task in the midst of a little bit of chaos. And I was scratching my head thinking, why can't I find something that is just appropriate? It felt like all of the girls' clothing kind of topped out at age 8 when it changed from being juvenile children's wear and then also into this very mature.
So true.
There was a big gap.
Yeah, there really is. Yeah. And so you felt like you could potentially help fill this gap?
I mean, not at first, but I will tell you it sparked a conversation between my husband and me. And in fact, he was the one that first said it. He's like, if you see a gap, do some digging and maybe it's something you can fill. Okay. And so that started the conversation of years that I would say I spent then looking into the market, thinking clearly I was missing something. Like this felt like such an obvious gap that certainly somebody out there is doing it. And so I went to markets and I did a lot of homework for the years.
And so then at what point did you decide to take that first step?
So I started kind of playing with it more on my own on the side. And then coming back to this magazine cover, in fact, it was right around that time. I was now pregnant with my first child. And I was getting a little burnt out on the interior side in full transparency. While it had been a period of growth, it was also a lot of change. Again, I now have 2 children. I'm expecting my own. It was just a lot going on in my world. And I was tired and I thought, I just need a break. And so by the summer of 2018, right before my first child was born, I decided to walk away from interiors. And I had mixed feelings. Part of me thought, I'm never going to go back to this. I need a change for my career. Part of me was like, I'm just going to put this on hold for a minute. We're going to see what happens. But once Charlie arrived and we kind of got on the other side of the holidays, then I was looking at it like, wait a minute, I really feel a passion and I'm being drawn to this idea of clothing for girls. And I had identified a gap in the market at that point. So it was a conversation we had at home, and my husband was like, why don't you just pursue it? Why not? We decided it was applicable skills, very different industries, interiors and fashion, but applicable skills.
And so you obviously have a lot of confidence to put yourself out there and try new things. How does one even begin to build a line of clothes? Is it sketching that you do? Are you looking at, manufacturing? What is that first step?
Probably all of the above. I mean, sketches, absolutely, for sure. But honestly, that was the easiest part.
Okay.
So a lot of the original designs stem from things that my mother and grandmother had passed down, which is part of the name Retta Jane.
Yeah.
So it's this story built on heritage pieces from my mother and my grandmother that they've given to me. So a lot of those were our kind of core silhouettes. And then I started to educate myself in anything I could on the fashion end. So I took night classes at WashU. I took a sewing class. I took a pattern making class. And it was not so that I could do the sewing or the pattern making, but so that I could at least speak the language. Mm-hmm. And then I started to surround myself with other designers that knew more than I did, that could maybe open doors and introduce me to people. I was doing a lot of seminars, any talks I could attend. I mean, it was pretty much immersing myself in the industry at that point.
And I know you connected with Audra, correct?
Yes.
At one point. Tell me a little bit about what you learned from her, Audra, the St. Louis-based fashion designer.
And Audra was just such a gift, and she's a dear friend. And at the beginning, but she was a great supporter in the sense that she sat down with me, gave me some of the analytical, technical verbiage and perspective that I needed, and also opened the door for fabric vendors. We took some trips to New York together.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, she was really an integral part on getting me over the hump of what I knew and what I didn't know, and helped me learn the language and even just the timeline of this is how a garment moves from inception to actual production.
And so were you able to sell your work at one point to a manufacturing company, or how did that evolve?
Yes. So originally the very early idea of Retta Jane was that we were going to create it on demand.
Okay.
And without getting into the weeds, it was as it sounds, is that you could order the garment online. It would be made and delivered to you within 10 days.
Okay.
We kept no inventory. It was a phenomenal approach that we were taking. And we identified a manufacturer here in the United States.
Okay.
So we aligned with them, and everything was kind of going like clockwork.
And then COVID, correct?
And then two parts, COVID and another baby.
Okay. Right. Okay. Right.
So I was pregnant with my second child. Then in 2019, we went back to back, and my physician actually told me that I was traveling too much, and he's like, "You've got to put the kibosh on this." And I was about 8 months pregnant, I think, at the time. And I said, "But we're planning to launch this line in the spring." And he's laughing. He's going, "Well, you're having a baby in the winter, so you need to put that first." So I put the pause on Retta Jane, and I will tell you, at the time, I just thought that was so devastating. Couldn't believe it. And I thought, well, this is what I have to do. He's right. I have another baby coming. Obviously, it's my priority. So I had my second child in January of 2020.
Okay.
For those of you doing the math, 2 months later, COVID hit and the world shut down.
Yes.
So it was very well timed, just not on my time, but it was very well timed.
And so then how did that impact your trajectory?
So once COVID hit, I mean, we were all, kind of to look back on it, we were now all at home. So we had a house now, not of 4, but of 6, and our nanny, which she's now like a sister to me. She's still part of our family and the greatest thing that ever happened to us. But she basically did not move in, but kind of quarantined with us.
Yes.
And so we now have a house of 7, including a 17-month-old and a newborn. It was insane. And I remember sitting those early days in the dining room like, okay, this is now my new office, and I'm just going to keep forging ahead. And while I had this great energy to push forward, everything around us was shutting down. Right. So we had pattern makers lined up in New York who literally would just refuse to call me back. Everything I knew and had so systematically put into place to execute this fell to the wayside within a month. It was wild.
Devastating.
Very devastating. But almost not so much in the sense as it felt when I put Retta Jane on hold the first time. Yeah. I had this renewed sense of like, all right, well, I've already put it on hold once. We're not doing it again.
Oh,
like
okay.
I'm going to do this. So I started to, again, kind of immerse myself in the industry, webinars, everything was online. So every day I felt like I was attending something, like a webinar, an online class, just to keep me versed and connected. And then I had to align myself with other people. So I remember cold emailing pattern makers in New York and just saying like, hey, Midwest girl, children's wear line. I mean, from the outside, it was probably not that desirable. But inevitably, I connected with one of the best pattern makers in New York. I'm biased, but he is. And I'll take your project. This sounds great, because he was being dropped by people too.
Right.
So it worked out well.
Oh my gosh. And what gives you this resiliency that you have? You are so tenacious in everything you do, all the ups and downs. Where does that come from?
At first, and I think I used this word already, it was that naivete, and it was just, oh, I can do this. Why not? That why not me perspective. And I think as I've gotten older, I don't want to look back and look at something and go, oh, well, I had that great idea and I didn't do it. Yeah. I think I'm now 47, but I think when you're coming up in your late 30s, maybe 40s, I started to see a lot of complacency around peers. And be it in careers or marriages or, I mean, whatever it was. And I thought, goodness, I've already been married and divorced. I'm on my second marriage. The ground didn't fall out from under me. Right. I had endured some challenges on the personal end that didn't break me. Mm-hmm. And so I think I started looking at my career as, well, what in the world is the worst that can happen? Like, I can fail, but I would rather fail miserably than to have this idea at 90 and go, I didn't do anything with it. Right. So it was kind of, it was almost my version of the midlife crisis. I mean, truly. And I was like, I'm not going to go out and buy the red convertible, but I'm going to throw this crazy idea I have against the wall and see what happens.
Where does the line stand today?
So we've had a lot of ups and downs, and that's almost for another podcast in terms of the direction we took and all of the hurdles to get it launched. But by the time we finally launched Retta Jane, it was May 2023.
Okay.
And we launched online. We started to go the wholesale route. We've kind of pivoted from that to we've learned a lot in our infancy still. So now we're online, and we do a lot of in-person events.
Okay.
So a lot of boots on the ground, which we have found works very well because it's tweens. So when you think about it, it's a very tough market, which is why, in fact, there was a gap in the market and a lot of people weren't touching it.
Oh, interesting. So you kind of discovered that. You found out like why this has not been a market that's been tapped previously.
It is very tough. You have changing bodies, changing temperaments in girls. You have two people to whom you have to sell. You have the parent and the child that both have to agree. Yes. Because the girl at this point is not typically the one carrying the financial purse.
Yeah.
So it's a double conversion. Also, you have, with the changing bodies, it's harder to turn a transaction online. It's much easier in person where they can physically try these things on. We've learned a lot, but what we've also learned is that it's a needed gap to fill. Mm-hmm. And though it's a tight-knit one, but there's a lot of request for it, and those clients that we find become very loyal.
And so I imagine these are pop-ups that you're hosting. And is that here in St. Louis? Do you travel? to other cities? How does that work?
A lot of traveling, and we've actually become quite creative with where we're popping up.
Okay.
For example, we've done several at women's wear boutiques, higher end women's wear boutiques across the country. In Charleston, for example, they don't sell children, they don't sell tween, but we entered under the guise of, well, we are cultivating your next generation of client. And so we form these events there where the mothers of these stores, their loyal customers, then bring in their daughters. And it's really exciting because we give the child, the girl, this view of like, oh, I'm stepping into something a little more sophisticated and maybe a little older, which is what they tend to want at that age.
Right.
But the catch is, but we're actually sophisticated and age appropriate, and because we found we don't fit well in traditional tween stores because we're not trend driven.
Exactly. And so tell us if you could describe the aesthetic for those who are listening. How do you describe the Retta Jane girl?
So I would say we're very classic, and I know that word can be used kind of ad nauseum, but we're authentic. We're based on this generational story. Mm-hmm. Truly, these cherished pieces that were passed down to us is what we are basing things. So, in fact, I'm wearing it today. This is our Towner cape.
Love it.
For girls, actually.
For girls,
it can kind of fit into the biggest size. But it is based on a cape my grandmother passed down to me from the 40s.
So cool.
Just as fashionable and relevant now as it was back then. Absolutely. So that's kind of this look. They're very sophisticated bases, like clothing bases is what I say, but we also are designed in a way that we can adapt to the girl. So we've had customers that are very preppy wear our garments. We've had girls that are very edgy. I mean, I get pictures from people all the time where they have combat boots on and a leather jacket with one of our very feminine little skirts.
Cool.
So the girl can wear it, not the outfit wear them.
So it sounds like you have a women's wear line in the works.
Yes, we do, which is part of why I'm wearing this. I feel like I kept wearing the capes and women kept saying, well, now wait a minute, when do we get that?
And so when is that? When will we be able to shop for women's clothes?
It'll be this fall. So it comes out this fall.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's exciting.
And that decision was based on the relationship that you've talked about?
Correct. I mean, it was truly market feedback. We would go to these events and the mothers would kind of make like, oh, well, wait, I want to buy this, or why don't you have this for me? So it felt like a natural transition. And we'd always envisioned maybe one day growing it. We're just doing it a lot sooner than I anticipated.
What's the biggest challenge for you as a designer to design for women as opposed to young girls? Anything in particular stand out to you?
I mean, the first answer I was going to say is narrowing down the ideas. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of ideas, which is great. And then the other thing that I want to mention, we're very conscious that we are not making a mommy and me collection.
Right.
There are a lot of adolescent girl brands out there, and more emerging every day. So many of them just cut from their women's wear. They make a smaller version and give it to the girls. Mm-hmm. We are very purposeful when we design for our girls. We want them to be age appropriate, yes, but also we want them to be able to move in it. They all have pockets. We're trying to really adapt to what the girl needs. And so when we design the women's wear collection, we're looking at it through that same lens. It's not just a larger version of what we're doing for the girls. Now, there will be a nod to both, and sometimes we'll use the same fabrics across the board. Mm-hmm. So it feels connected and cohesive, but by no means is it mimicked.
Okay. And so will you use the same selling model that you use for tweens for women, the pop-ups, or do you have something else in mind?
I think out of the gate, it will be similar.
Okay.
But we do hope to wholesale with women's wear.
Oh,
so
okay.
I think, and then once we get our feet wet in it and get a response with this initial collection and maybe the first couple collections, we'll explore that.
Okay, interesting. And this was super exciting to me when you called or we texted or we reconnected, and you were saying that you were dipping your toes back into the world of interior
Yes.
design. So not only are you designing this line for girls and embarking on this new collection for women, but you've decided to go back to the beginning of your
Yes.
career into interiors. What in the world
Thank
made
you.
you think, this is a good idea with everything that you have on your plate?
Well, and here's the irony. Never say never, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, had you told me this when I exited interiors, I probably would have laughed at you, especially knowing now that the fashion is up and moving.
Yeah.
I never would have thought this happened. But I will paint the picture. It was summer of 24. Mm-hmm. And Retta Jane was at a pace where we were in selling mode and we were doing our boots on the ground. So we weren't designing any new collections at the time. And I don't want to say I had downtime per se, but this idea had been floated to me from another client, from an older client, like, hey, would you ever take on a project? And I kept, I don't know. And finally like, well, maybe I will. Maybe I'll kind of dip my toes and see what that is. And I laugh because it's one of the most flattering parts of my career was truly putting my toe back into interiors. I told a handful of people, including some old clients, and the floodgates opened, it was the last thing on earth that I anticipated. And so between July of 24 and December of 24, the interiors grew at a rate that by that holiday season, I looked at my husband and I thought I was having another midlife crisis. I'm like, what am I doing? Wait, yeah. I can't have these two. Now I'm getting so busy, I can't manage them both. And what am I going to do? And so it was either shut this down or scale it. And with the response, I thought it would be crazy not to just lean into it and scale it. So by January of 25, I started hiring on team members and we continue to grow. And it's phenomenal and exciting.
So you're still able to balance the two with a little bit more help, a little bit more. Wow. And so can you tell us a little bit about any of the interiors projects that you are excited about right now?
Yeah, I mean, it really runs the gamut from new builds, renovations, little ones. We've got a condo in Clayton that we just took on. We have several, full family, as I would say, full family renovation projects. I will say they're very different. Mm-hmm. What we have always kind of revered ourselves for, I guess in my career, and now we put this out there as a firm, is that we don't want anybody to know we were ever there. Mm-hmm. And I mean this. Like our clients' styles are very, very different. And I think one of my skills as a designer is being able to kind of tap into their personalities and walk away and design a project that is very much their home. Yes. If there's nothing that's ever off limits, if they come to me and they say, I have this beautiful purple velvet Chesterfield sofa that was passed down to me and I have to use it, make it work, we will make it work. But it kind of ties back into the clothing aspect too. It's these generational ideas, these stories. Most of our clients have kids and dogs, and we're designing for them to live in the spaces. Yes, we want it to be aesthetically beautiful, of course, but we want it also very much to function. It's not about a portfolio piece for us. We want to do our best work, and that is a bonus. Like, we would like to get pictures and build up our work, but we really are excited to be taking on projects with clients that trust us to tap into who they are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. How do you think the interiors business or community here in St. Louis has changed since your first foray into interiors back in, the mid 2000s?
Well, a lot. And I keep laughing. I'm like, I don't know anybody anymore. There's so many amazing young designers that have come into St. Louis, which is, I think, so cool. And then the designers with whom I kind of grew up in the ranks with have become significantly either like very, very well known. Take an Amy Studebaker, who's now doing big national projects. Ami Corley, who is so talented and has her own like very clear line of what she does. Jacob Laws, who's now moved to Charleston. I mean, these were kind of my partners in crime as we were all coming up. And now there's a new guard, which is, I think, really thrilling.
Have you had to reestablish vendors or become more acquainted with like new shops or new antique dealers that you know, maybe that working in the St. Louis area, you know, that first time around?
Yes, very much so. I mean, we kind of have our old players, which is fun because I can go back and be like, hey, you know, remember me? I'm back. But yeah, I mean, so much has changed. And we're in a post-COVID world. Yeah. And I'm not going to lie, I'm very glad I was out of it during COVID because I heard it was just a nightmare. Yes. But we're a post-COVID. A lot has changed in terms of deliverables and expectations. So it in a lot of ways feels like a new industry. I'm learning the ropes again, but of course the skills are the same. The projects are the same, but it's a different design world out there.
I love what you say about designing a home or a space, but no one knows that you were ever there. I think that's so great. So you're really speaking to the homeowner and what the homeowner wants for his or her environment.
Truly. I mean, I don't want somebody to walk into your home, Veronica, and be like, oh my gosh, she totally hired Retta to do this. I mean, while that's flattering, I don't live there. Mm-hmm. And I think the best compliment to me would be for somebody to walk into the house and be like, oh my gosh, Veronica, this is so you. Wow. How did you do this? Or what made you think of this? Those are the questions, and they pose it to you rather than trickling it back to the designer.
Yep, love that. And you have another very exciting announcement about a new project in Clayton that you're taking on. So why don't you tell us what's going on there?
And you can see by the smile on my face, or to those listening at home, I've got grinning from ear to ear. I'm so excited. We are opening a storefront in Clayton. We signed the lease and got the keys about a month ago.
And where is that exactly?
So we are on Maryland Avenue. We're 8109 Maryland. So for those that know Clayton well, we are on the north side of the city, right before the residential side starts, and we're by Happy Up Toys and Simon's Jewelry and Almonds. So that stretch of retail.
Great spot.
Great spot.
And so this will be a place for you to sell Retta Jane. Is it going to be the interior studio? What do you have in mind?
It will be all of the above.
Yeah.
So it will be a home for everything. It's a 3,600 square foot space, so it's large. 1,200 square feet of that will be our offices. So the creative for both the interiors and the brand.
Okay.
And then the other 2,400 square feet will be a mix of retail and a little space we're calling the reading room. And the reading room, I equate it to a cafe, but I say that lightly because I think it's going to be malleable, and we're going to see how our customers take to it and what they want from it. But we're essentially making this maybe 600 square foot space inside that becomes like a little community hub. There will be a library wall with aesthetic books, so in interiors and fashion and photography. You can go in and grab a glass of wine. You don't have to be shopping. You could come in and peruse the books and sit with a friend. Or perhaps you are shopping with your daughter on a Saturday and you're looking for a dress for a dance, and afterwards want to grab a little nibble. The two of you can sit and have some time together to make it an experience.
Wow. And so will you be bringing in brands outside of your own?
Yes.
Okay.
We will. So we'll have Retta Jane, both the children's and the women's wear. Mm-hmm. Then we will have adjacent brands, likely not other clothing brands, but that's to be determined. But as of now, we're looking at more home products, adjacencies like a fragrance or a candle, maybe skincare or headpieces. I mean, just anything that you might buy accessory-wise for clothing or for the home.
And so how easy is it to convince another brand to come into a new storefront? Like, is that a difficult thing to do? Or
I should knock on some wood here, but no, not as difficult as we thought it would be.
Okay.
And what we're very much trying to do is carve out a niche where we are complementing our neighbors and not competing. So we want to try and offer pieces that are not found, especially in St. Louis, but regionally. And that may not be exclusive, but for example, we're talking with a ceramics artist out of Venice, and we're working with them to maybe bring in a few pieces, and they're not sold in the region. And so admittedly, when we went and started contacting them, we thought, what are they going to think? We're this Midwest, nobody, we don't even have a store open yet. But as the conversations flow, they're just as excited as we are to get into a new market and to have a new conversation. So these brands, the way we're viewing it is, would it be something that my mother or my grandmother or I would put in our house? Would it be something that we would wear? Like, does it kind of fit under this Retta Jane umbrella?
I love that you keep going back to your mother and your grandmother and so many of the various creative paths that you've taken. I think that's really cool. What can you tell us about what the space will actually look like? Have you thought about that?
Yes, very much. And we literally have it listed as a client on our project board right now.
That.
So it is a full client. So the interior is actually going to be all red. We're painting the whole thing red, and it's, for those wondering, it's Negroni by Schumacher, or by Backdrop, I should say, but Schumacher owns Backdrop now.
Okay.
And it's this very rich, it's not fire engine red, it's not Valentine's red, it's kind of this Negroni cocktail red, and very intentional. And I think a lot of stores, clothing stores in particular, tend to go and default to white so that nothing competes with it. We're looking at it through a totally different lens. We want you to walk in and feel like you are walking into our world. So we're kind of enveloping this whole thing in color, in pattern, and it's going to feel hopefully very different, but very personal.
When can people expect the opening?
We're looking at maybe soft opening in August, but a grand opening early September. That's the goal.
Okay. And your biggest challenge at the moment in terms of the storefront would be?
Oh, goodness. I'm learning all the things. I mean, I'm learning things that I didn't anticipate. For example, we're trying to get a liquor license, and I'm learning health department codes and regulations. And while I've worked on commercial projects before, this one hits a little bit different. And so there's large things like that, big hurdles that we kind of have to cross and get off our list before we can move on to the next steps. There's also funding. We've fundraised for this, and we still are putting that out there if anybody's interested.
Yeah.
But we're exploring all these paths that I've never done before. So it's a big period of growth, and at the same time, we're still managing our day-to-day projects. So it's a balance.
What does Retta Jane look like in 10 years?
I want to be a brand that builds its roots here in St. Louis. This is where I'm from. St. Louis is home. And we're raising our family here. We're not moving from here. And there's a lot of talent here. And I hope that what we're building with Retta Jane is going to be one of those stories that in 10 and 20 years, you go, oh my gosh, Retta Jane started in St. Louis. I didn't realize that. I see stores across the country. We already know where we want our second store. I mean, we talk about these things on a national level, but starting here at home. So again, the hope is that we are a well-known brand 10 years from now.
I love it. Well, congratulations to you for never giving up and for really being so true to your vision and your passion.
Thank you.
So thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thanks, Veronica.
Before we get to V's Views, here's a word from our sponsor. This episode of House of Lou is supported by St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. Don't miss the SLSO's last Young Friends Night of the season with Mahler Fifth, Landscapes of Emotion. Young Friends brings music lovers together for an unforgettable night at the Symphony, designed to be social, welcoming, and easy to enjoy. Mahler's fifth season creates a particularly soul-stirring orchestral experience, happening on April 10th at Powell Hall at the Jack C. Taylor Music Center. Tickets are available at slso.org. And now on to V's Views. If you love interiors, gardens, beautiful spaces, basically, if you rearrange your bookshelf for fun, Here are 3 events in March that I think you will love. Morpho Mania is happening all month at the Sophia M. Sachs Butterfly House in Chesterfield. Thousands, yes, thousands of blue morpho butterflies from Costa Rica will be flying and moving about with their incredible 6-inch wings that flash an almost neon iridescent blue. In addition to enjoying the sight of the butterflies, you'll also learn about camouflage, habitat protection, and how to support butterflies in your own yard. Then, on March 13th, the studio at Bowood is offering a class on designing a herb garden. Kathy Hoyer will share tips on when to start seeds, where and when to plant, and how to trim culinary favorites like rosemary, basil, thyme, and sage. The class runs from 2 to 4 p.m. And on March 17th from 1 to 3 p.m., there's Maj at the Kitchen, Beginner Lesson 2 at Kitchen Conservatory. If you've been noticing the resurgence of American Mahjong, the beautiful tiles, the chic card tables, the very aesthetic game nights, this is your chance to gather your friends and pick up a new hobby. Janine and Tracy from Maj with a Twist are leading a 90-minute lesson focused on the Charleston, the strategic passing sequence that sets up your hand. All right, everyone, that's it for me. Thanks so much for joining me, and I will see you next time. Thank you for listening to House of Lou. Our episodes drop once a month. Be sure to follow us and share the episode with your friends. Be in touch. Subscribe to our design and home newsletter at stlmag.com/newsletters and follow along on Instagram at stlewismag. And you can follow me, VT Lookbook. If you like what you've heard, show us some love by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you choose to listen. We'll see you next time, and just remember, there's so much to see in St. Louis if you know where to look. This is a production of St. Louis Magazine, produced by Kylie Green Lemoyne, edited and booked by Veronica Theodoro, audio and video editing by Henry Cohen.